Hey guys, how's it going? Today I'm gonna do kind of a little rant on the ThinkPad 25. That is the Lenovo Retro ThinkPad 25, and I use retro in quotes here because it's not really retro. Um, I hope you guys know there is a YouTuber by the name of Louis Rossman out on YouTube, and he has a lot of subscribers, and he makes thousands and thousands of dollars basically talking about the virtues of the old school ThinkPads and how the new school, I would say the modern ThinkPads, are basically pieces of junk. And he also bashes MacBooks a lot. Okay, but that's how this guy makes money. Okay, there's a YouTuber, Louis Rossman. He has his own company, Rossman Group. I'm on his website right now where he's basically complaining about, because that's what he does. He complains a lot. And of course, he complains about the retro ThinkPad 25 and how it's a piece of junk. And that's what it says in the title here of this blog. Um, and I want to give you guys my comments and thoughts about it because I have done a video comparing the Retro ThinkPad 25, which I own. Actually, this is what I'm using to record this video with right now is the ThinkPad 25. And I've compared it with the old X61, which I really like, and I think that's like the T61 and the X61 are basically the last ThinkPads with the 4:3 screen ratio. So I guess a lot of retro ThinkPad enthusiasts would think that's the very last one, the very last true ThinkPad ever made. And I'm a big fan of it, the X61, the T61. So don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of the old school ThinkPads, and I think they're great. However, I don't quite agree with Louis Rossman's opinion here, and I think that the ThinkPad 25 gets unfairly bashed. And I'm gonna go through why in this video. I'm gonna look at some of the points he brings up, and I'm gonna agree with some of them and disagree with some of them. So I'm gonna go through. So yeah, Louis Rossman, he's very famous on YouTube. He's very, very well known for basically making a lot of money on his videos talking about these ThinkPads and why some of them suck and why some of them are great. So let's go through here. We're on his blog. This is his little opinion piece about why the Lenovo Retro ThinkPad 25 is a piece of junk. Now, keep in mind that the ThinkPad 25 did come out October 9th of last year because that is the 25th anniversary of the ThinkPad, and Lenovo wanted to release the ThinkPad on that date. So keep that in mind. Okay, first part of this blog is basically talking about the old school ThinkPads and why they were so great and why so many people love them, and they have a lot of fans. Okay, so the T61 is mentioned. That's this ThinkPad right here. It is This is the standard. I would say the gold standard of the old school ThinkPads, and the X61 is basically the 12-inch version of that. And yeah, so that of course the T61 is a great ThinkPad. Um, and it was one of the very last ThinkPads released with the 4:3 aspect ratio, has the Think Light, the small trackpad. Okay, I had the X61, which all have the same thing. Then he goes through and he says, okay, T520 went to a 16:9 display. Okay, but keep in mind that pretty much every laptop manufacturer at this time, this is around 2009 and 2010, almost all the manufacturers went to either a 16:9 or 16:10 display. Now the 16:10 display would also disappear around 2012 or so. So the 16:9 display, which this is a widescreen aspect ratio, has kind of been standardized, and most computer manufacturers basically just stick with this display size because this is the standard that mainstream consumers know. And even business laptop makers like Lenovo, they had to go to the 16:9 display because there was pressure, I guess, from the executives to go more mainstream, and it's also become less and less easy to find the old aspect ratios. I guess it's become harder and harder to source, right? So I guess that's why they all went to 16:9 around latest 2012-ish, I think, but around 2009, 2010 is when all the manufacturers went to 16:9. So 16:10 was, yeah, basically disappeared by 2012. So now I talked about the ThinkPad T530. So the XX30 series is where they changed the top row of the ThinkPad, and they changed it to use the now modern controls, I guess, for the volume and F and the function keys. And then the XX40 series changed, or I should say, no, the XX30 is where they changed it into a chiclet keyboard. My bad. The XX30 is where they changed the whole series to be chiclet keyboard, and the XX40 is when they finally moved. They removed the track point buttons. Now I have the X240, so I know exactly what kind of computer this is, because this is my first ThinkPad was the XX240, right? Yes, they removed the dedicated track point buttons and trackpad buttons, and it wasn't very good. And Lenovo basically screwed up by removing that. And Louis talks about it on here, and I totally agree with him. I think that trackpad is a piece of garbage, and definitely Lenovo realized that error though. Now the thing is, he doesn't mention this here, but after the XX40 into the XX50 series, Lenovo actually changed that back. They changed the track point buttons to be, they put in the dedicated track point buttons because they realized they made a mistake with the XX40 series, and they put it back. And Louis doesn't even mention that here. He just says, "Oh, you moved the track point buttons. It's garbage." Blah 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 blah. But he never mentioned that Lenovo actually realized the mistake. They actually listened to their customers. They got the feedback, and they actually put back in the dedicated track point buttons for the XX50. And still, to this day, we still have dedicated track point buttons because people complain about it, and Lenovo actually listened and they put it back in. But however, Louis doesn't talk about it here. I just want to mention that they did put it back in. All right, and then in this section of the blog, he talks about a numpad being added to the 15-inch models, and then he complains about this, and he says, well, okay, the numpad causes the keyboard to shift to the left and the trackpad to shift to the left, so now the keyboard is off center. I don't think this is that big of a deal. Like, okay, first of all, the numpad was only added to the 15-inch workstation models. It was not added to the 14-inch models. It's not like they're going to put it on a 12-inch model, right? It's only added to the 15-inch and 17-inch models. So yeah, and currently in Lenovo's lineup right now, if you look at the P series workstation, which is the successor to the W series workstations, the 15-inch, 17-inch ThinkPads have the numpad, and the keyboard is a little bit off center. But I don't think it's that big of a deal. It might be a big of a deal if you have OCD, but it's not that big of a deal. But you get a 10 key numpad, and that's actually better because for people who are, productivity workers and say they're using Excel spreadsheet and they're used to crunching numbers and stuff like that, they're doing statistics or something like that. Having a 10 key numpad is way better than having that just the normal dedicated number row on the top. The 10 key numpad is far superior when you have that kind of situation. And how many times have you heard people say, well, this keyboard is not a good keyboard. It's not the full 10 key numpad keyboard, right? You don't call that a full size keyboard. Well, then you have it on a laptop, a 15-inch and 17-inch laptops later. So I don't get what all the complaining is about here. You're adding extra keys. You're adding a 10 key numpad, which is very useful for people who are crunching numbers. And so what if the keyboard is shifted a little bit to the left? I'm sure people can live with that. It's not that big of a deal unless you have OCD. So I don't understand the complaints here. To me, adding the numpad is a good feature. It's not a detriment at all. I agree that this particular model he has put up is the one without the dedicated track point buttons. But again, that was only for one generation, the XX40 generation. He doesn't talk about the subsequent generations because they add the track point buttons back in. But he doesn't talk about that. He puts literally the worst example that he can find up here, which is the XX40 generation, which I think is the worst ThinkPad generation. But he has to use it to get his point across here that modern ThinkPads are trash basically. But keep in mind that it has gotten a little bit better since then. You have dedicated track point buttons back, and I don't think the 10 key numpad addition is a detriment at all. All right. Then he's talking about the retro ThinkPad, which the discussion began around 2014, 2015, especially when Lenovo made their changes for the XX40 generation, which, like I said, is the worst generation of ThinkPad. And yeah, he's basically making fun of it and saying, okay, let's just put an old ThinkPad there. Obviously, he's quoting guys that he agrees with. Basically, bashing ThinkPads and the bashing the retro ThinkPad in particular. Okay. Um, yes, he's complaining a lot because he's trying to compare this retro ThinkPad to a workstation, and so I think Louis has kind of the wrong idea here. He's expecting a whole lineup of retro ThinkPads, basically, like a retro X series, a retro T series, and a retro W series, but that just isn't the case. Lenovo released only one model and one configuration for the ThinkPad Anniversary 25, and they happened to pick the T4 series, the T470 laptop to base it upon because they obviously thought that 14 inches was the compromise size, I guess. It's not too small and it's not too big, and I guess they think that most people will be satisfied with it. So they have one size and one configuration, and the reason they have that is because if you actually go to Lenovo YouTube channel and you watch the unboxing video, they talk a little bit about this. If you read David Hill's little 25th or 20th anniversary book that came with the 25th anniversary packaging, and if you read some of his interviews and stuff that has been spread out on the internet, I think you'll understand why Lenovo only offered one of these retro ThinkPads, only one configuration, only one size, and the reason is because originally David Hill, he came up with the whole idea of this retro laptop, and he sent out all the surveys and stuff, and he was pushing for this, right, for the fans, right? And what other brand really does that, right? If you look at Apple, for example, Apple would never ever bring back anything from the past, right? No matter how much you want those old USB ports to be back, or you want the old iPod Classic to be back, or say, hey Apple, why don't you make the MacBooks, why don't you bring those ports back and stuff? They're never going to do that, right? Apple's a company that's focused on the future only, and if you don't like that future, well then screw you. Like they're going to go to the future, like they're going to make their laptops and do whatever they want, and they don't care what you think. You're going to have to go with them or go to another brand. So that's Apple's thinking, right? They're never gonna go back, but thankfully, unlike Dell, unlike HP, pretty much every other company, Lenovo actually thought about going back and giving the Lenovo ThinkPad fans something that they might want. So David Hill was pushing for this, and the rest of the Lenovo executives didn't want it. They were thinking like, how is this going to sell? How big of a market is there? Is this just a niche amount of people? Because most people who buy Lenovo ThinkPads, I think these days are actually pretty satisfied with them. I think it is a niche minority of ThinkPad owners, especially the ones from the past, who really, really, really miss the old ThinkPad design, the 4:3 aspect ratio, the Think Light, the old school 7-row keyboard, right? But that's kind of a niche, right? It's kind of a niche group of people. Like customers these days or consumers these days probably don't even know what the difference is between a 4:3 display and a 16:9 display. They probably don't even know, right? They probably never seen a 4:3 display before. So I don't think so. Lenovo executives are probably thinking like, well, why should we do this? Why should we make a retro ThinkPad for this niche group of people, right? But fortunately, David Hill actually pushed for this, and he was only able to get them to only like budge a little bit because part of Lenovo's budget has to be allocated to this. So that's why he even got the concept of the retro ThinkPad out in the first place. And obviously, they couldn't do everything they wanted. They couldn't make a custom display or whatever. They couldn't redesign the chassis to add the VGA port, the Think Light, status indicator lights, display latch, whatever you're missing. They couldn't add those things because that would require a big part of the budget put into it. Instead, the best they could do is put the 7-row retro keyboard, and they actually did redesign this keyboard. If you notice, for people who have this laptop like me, we have noticed that the key travel is a little bit shallower on this keyboard than on the old school 7-row keyboards, and that's because the chassis is thinner. There's just not enough travel, so they couldn't it's not just the old laptop keyboard put into the new one. You can't just do that, right? And they said this in the YouTube video for the unboxing video. They didn't just put the old school 7-row keyboard and attach it to the T470 chassis. They can't do that because they reduced the travel, and they had to do that because the chassis is slimmer than the new ThinkPads, right? The older ThinkPads had a thicker chassis, actually way thicker if you do the comparison, than the new ThinkPads. So that's why they had to completely redesign the 7-row keyboard actually to fit it into the new modern style slim chassis. So they actually did quite a bit of work here, and the track point and the trackpad are actually different as well. Not many people talk about this. People who have the TP25, like me, know that they actually redesigned the trackpad and the track point as well. So the track point buttons are a little bit different from the normal track point buttons you get on other ThinkPads in the modern ThinkPads, I mean. And the trackpad is also different as well. Like the click is different and it's rubberized as well. And actually, even the palm rest is rubberized. So that's something that harkens back to the X300 and X301. That these are little details that people who don't have this notebook don't realize, but they actually did a little bit more than you might think. It's not just sticking an old keyboard into a modern chassis. It's not just that. They actually did redesign the keyboard to fit it into the slim chassis, and they actually did redesign the track point buttons and the trackpad as well. So yeah, I think I want to give Lenovo credit for where it's due, because I know a lot of people just want to bash this computer, and they don't realize that a lot more work went into it than they think. Um, and yeah, like the other things, like I mentioned, David Hill tried to push for it, but obviously Lenovo only has a certain budget, I guess, and for this project, because this is kind of just like a pet project. It's not really something Lenovo was going to do, really, right? So that's why they couldn't allocate that much money for this, and henceforth they couldn't make a new display for it. They couldn't make a new chassis for it. That's why it is what it is. But at least they did. At least they did do it, right? It's better than not doing it at all. That's the thing. Like, okay, now Louis wants to talk about the display. Yeah, like I mentioned, they can't do a 4.3, 5.4. Like, has has there ever been a laptop with a 5.4 screen, anyways? Okay, 3.2. So the Microsoft Surface Book notably has a 3.2 screen, and so do some of the Chromebooks, for example. So 3.2 screens also have to be custom ordered and in large quantities to be able to be financially feasible, right? So Microsoft is obviously doing that. They're mass ordering quantities of 3.2 screens because they're selling the Surface Book en masse. However, this model is limited edition, like I said. They're not selling it en masse. It is a pet project. That's why we can't get 3.2 screens on it, or basically any other screen on it. And okay, it gives us 1080p. This, I believe, might be a cost issue as well. If they did give you the same 1440p OLED screen that's on the ThinkPad X1 Yoga, for example, I think they might have to redesign the display as well. Remember that they are stuck with the T470 chassis and the display. And I don't believe that the T470 gives you another option either higher than 1080p. So you're kind of stuck with 1080p because that's what they chose for the base. It's a T470. The X1 Yoga with the 1440p OLED. I mean, I would love that screen. I would love that display. I have that laptop. It's a brilliant display, but that display is also different than the one that the T470 has. So the TP25 can't use that one. So that's why we're stuck with a 1080p IPS, thankfully, display. You know, people think that this this computer's display really sucks because it's just a 1080p display, but actually it doesn't suck that much. You know, it's a touch screen, and some people may not like that because they never asked for a touch screen on a business computer. But it's another option, right? You can use it or you can just ignore it, right? I mean, it's a matte touchscreen. It's not like it's glossy or anything. It's not really going to get in the way of your display. So you can just choose not to use it. And about the 1080p resolution, like I already said, yes, it's not as high resolution as some people may have wanted, but it's really not that bad. I mean, if you look at the old school ThinkPads, you know, the venerated T61 that Louis actually had here, that computer, like those displays really sucked. They had TFT displays, and they had CCFL backlights. So it wasn't very bright and it really sucked. So this has a 1080p IPS display with an LED backlight. It's way better. Like, besides the aspect ratio, whatever you want to talk about for that, I know it's 69, but if you just want to talk about in terms of the display itself, there's no way that you can say that this IPS display is worse than the old one, right? The old one was a shitty TFT CCFL backlight display, right? This one, IPS LED backlit. It's definitely better, right? So I don't know what people complain about this one. Okay, it's just the same display that the T470. It's a little bit dimmer because they're using a touchscreen, but that's fine because it's not that big of a difference. Okay, yeah. So again, you have people complaining about more options instead of less, which is a little bit weird for me. So you have first complaining about the numpad, adding a feature, complaining about it. Now complaining about adding a touchscreen that you don't have to use. So I don't understand that. Like, why complain about an extra option? And then complaining about the outdated graphics. Why can't you use the 1050 GPU, which is faster and more powerful with the same energy usage? Well, like I said, you would have to completely redesign the motherboard in order to use the 1050 GPU. The 940MX is possible because there's the T470P, and that's what this guy noted, right? T470P has a 940MX. It also has a quad-core processor. Well, you might be thinking, why didn't Lenovo use the T470P instead? Well, the T470P is actually a little bit thicker and a little bit heavier as well by 0.5 pounds. And it doesn't have Thunderbolt 3. It has mini DisplayPort instead. So I guess some people might have preferred that, but Lenovo ended up going with the T470 base instead. T470P has a different chassis and everything, so you can't exactly fit, the keyboard. I know some people actually want to do this. You can't fit the 7-wheel keyboard from the TP25 into the T470P. It doesn't work because it's a different chassis. The 940MX that was in the T470P, right? I guess Lenovo managed to do a little bit of a fix up to the motherboard of the T470 to accommodate 940MX because they already had the T470P. That's why they can offer it. They didn't put an MX150 instead because they didn't refresh their inventory that time. This was October 2017. Lenovo usually refreshes their inventory early in the year. We're expecting a refresh after CES, which is probably in a few days. So it's probably going to be January, February-ish before they refresh with the 8th gen Core i7s and the MX150s. So that's why you didn't see the TP25 with the MX150, because unfortunately it just came out a little bit late. That's why. And they had to come out on October 2017 because that's the 25th anniversary of the ThinkPad. So I guess they didn't have a choice because otherwise it would require a motherboard redesign, chassis redesign, etc. That's why I don't see a 1050, you don't see the MX150. However, again, this is complaining about more options, okay? Like the 940MX, how many other 14-inch business notebooks do you see with a dedicated GPU anyways? Even the old school Lenovo ThinkPads, like how many of them had a mid-range graphics card anyways, right? And 940MX isn't that bad, right? So it's at least better than the integrated Intel. So again, I think it's just people complaining about another feature, which I think is really weird. Like, would they like it better if they didn't have dedicated graphics at all, right? So yeah, I don't understand that. At least it does have dedicated graphics. I don't see any Dell Latitudes with the same, at the same size having dedicated graphics, or HP EliteBooks, 14-inch HP EliteBooks having dedicated graphics. So I don't know why complaining about this. I'm happy about the dedicated graphics. I don't care if it's the top of the line or a 1050, MX150, or whatever. It's better than the Intel integrated. Only dual core. Again, the T470P has the quad core processor. I understand people kind of want the quad core processor. The reason why it's dual core, again, they limited to whatever they have from the T470. They didn't. I guess the 7600U is a lot more expensive than the 7500U, so that's why they went with the 7500U. But again, I don't really understand why people complain about this, because how many 14-inch business notebooks do you see with quad-core processors, right? Like I know the Intel Core 8th gen processors are quad-core, but those haven't, Lenovo didn't get those yet. And usually quad-core processors are on 15-inch laptops, workstation laptops, or 17-inch laptops. 14-inch laptops with quad-core processors are probably only limited to like gaming laptops and stuff. Like I can't think of many quad core 14-inch laptops. And I mean, even having just the 7500U is good enough, right? That's usually the top of the line CPU that Lenovo normally offers on their 14-inch laptops. So I don't understand why people would complain about this. If they didn't complain about the T470, why are they complaining about the TP25 only having a dual core, right? Again, I don't get it. Okay, battery life. Again, this is a really stupid complaint because Lenovo is one of the only laptop makers, or ThinkPads are one of the only laptops that have removable batteries. And yeah, you can just, you can change out the battery. Like, it has a power bridge feature. It's basically the only laptop. ThinkPads are the only laptops that have this feature. It has dual batteries and you can hot swap them. Like, in theory, it has unlimited battery life as long as you have batteries, right? So why is battery life a complaint? I don't get it. You just buy more batteries, you swap it out, it's hot swappable. That's a feature that pretty much no other laptop brand has. So I don't get it. Starts at 1900. Actually, it is 1900. It's not starting at 1900. It is 1900 because there's no other configurations offered, right? Um, yeah, like I said, 1900. If you think about it, if you price out a T470 to the same specs without any discounts or promotions, it's going to be around the same. If you look at the MacBook Pros, the Microsoft Surface Books, and other stuff, um, yeah, it's not that bad. Like, for the specs and the features and what you get. Also, considering this is the only laptop on the market right now with the 7-year-old keyboard. You cannot find any other laptop on the market right now with the 7-year-old keyboard, okay? They're all chiclet style right now, except for Alienware's, but those are gaming laptops. Um, yeah, basically they're all chiclet style. Okay, if you want a 7-year-old old school keyboard, this is the only one, and it's limited edition. So 1900, it's reasonable, I think. Okay, literally a T470 retrofitted. Like I just said, it's not really the retrofitted keyboard. They had to redesign that keyboard, and the track point and trackpad are different as well. Were they lazy? Well, like I said, it's not lazy considering that this is a pet project, right? Considering that David Hill only had a specifically limited budget for this project, I don't think it's lazy. He probably did not get much money from the Lenovo executives or management to do this. So you got to work with what you have, right? Oh, right. Ports. Okay, you want to talk about ports. I actually think the TP25 has the best configuration of ports on a 14-inch laptop today, which is the same amount of ports as the T470, but the T470 also has a great array of ports. Let's look at it. It's 8 ports, basically. It has headphone jack, 3 USB 3s, HDMI, full size, of course, full size Ethernet. It has Thunderbolt 3, and it has a full size SD card reader. Yeah, that's pretty good. Like, find me a 14-inch laptop that has more ports than that or better ports than that. Louis is complaining it doesn't have a VGA port. You would have to redesign the chassis and the motherboard to fit that again. Obviously, this pet project did not get enough funding for something like that. And I would actually take Thunderbolt 3 over VGA. I mean, you could just get a VGA Thunderbolt to VGA dongle if you want, but we're talking about a modern laptop here, more so than a retro laptop. So a Thunderbolt 3 is actually more useful than a VGA. And I know people don't want to use dongles and stuff, but again, I think this computer does have enough ports, especially when compared to the other laptops on the market today, like the MacBook and the Surface Book and HP Spectre and whatever else is out there. XPS 13 is another popular one. I think this computer has more ports than all of them. Another thing that Louis actually didn't talk about here, but is mentioned by a lot of people online, is the fact that the retro TP25 ThinkPad doesn't have a ThinkLight, and it should have had a ThinkLight because a lot of people miss the ThinkLight. But obviously, they couldn't put a ThinkLight in because the display hinge, the lid hinge, is not thick enough. And as you can see, as the ThinkPads evolved over the years, they became a lot thinner. And of course, the lid also became a lot thinner. That's also why you don't have a displayed latch either. You don't have a display latch, and you don't have status indicator lights, and you don't have the think light, all because the display lid is right now is too thin to accommodate those things. And I know a lot of people don't like it, and they miss having a thicker notebook. I guess they miss having a thicker chassis because they have more functions or features with it. But yeah, I guess they couldn't be bothered to make a thicker version just for this special one-off laptop. You know what I mean? And also, like, having a backlit keyboard, and this is the first time a backlit keyboard is used with the old 7-row retro style keyboard, by the way. The backlit keyboard is actually much, much better at illuminating the keys than the old ThinkLight did. The only advantage of the old ThinkLight was that if you had a piece of paper or something on top of the keyboard, the ThinkLight could actually illuminate that. And that's the reason why a lot of people actually prefer the ThinkLight over the backlit keyboard. But I mean, come on, if you're talking about strictly the original purpose of the ThinkLight, which is to illuminate the keyboard, then I guess we can all agree that the backlit keyboard is actually much more functional in that original purpose than the ThinkLight. It's just that people use the ThinkLight for other things outside the original purpose, and that's why they like it. I mean, I can live without it. I can live without the status indicator lights or display latch or ThinkLight, but apparently some people can't. All right. Conclusion. This is not retro. This is junk. Well, I don't agree with you, Louis. I'm sorry. I think Lenovo, or David Hill rather, he did his best with whatever funding he got, whatever limited amount of funding he got from Lenovo executives and management. He did his best, and I think having this computer is better than not having it, right? Lenovo didn't have to do this. They didn't have to make a special retro computer. They didn't have to make a retro ThinkPad at all. And most other companies wouldn't. Apple wouldn't. HP wouldn't. Dell wouldn't. They wouldn't make an old school, like an old school computer with an old school keyboard. They wouldn't do any of those things. But Lenovo, and because they care about ThinkPad fans a little bit. I'm not saying they'll care enough to put a lot of funding to this project, but they care enough to actually make a notebook like this, and that's better than nothing, right? It's better than nothing. Better than not getting it. This is strictly better than T470. You want to say this is nothing more than T470, a different keyboard. This is strictly better than T470. This is a T470 with dedicated graphics. However low powered you want to say it is, 940MX is crap, whatever. Okay, it's better than the Intel graphics, okay? There's no way that this computer is worse than the T470 because it has 940MX, way better than the Intel graphics, and it has a 7-row keyboard, which I'm sure you all agree is better than the stupid chiclet keyboard that's on the modern laptop these days, right? Yeah, you can't say that the T470 is better than this, and I do agree that this is not a retro computer. It's more like a modern computer with a much better keyboard, and it's basically a strip upgrade of one of the existing computers. But I don't think it's junk. So yeah, it's definitely not junk. This is strictly superior to the T470, which I don't see as many people complaining about. So yeah, I don't get it. You want to say the resolution is from 2011. Well, a lot of other laptops these days have resolutions from 1080p too. So you want to say other laptops, other premium laptops have resolutions for 2011 as well? Like, yeah, yeah, like I said, it's just people want to complain about everything, and this is a T470. Like I said, if people are not complaining about the shitty resolution on T470, they should not be complaining about the same shitty full HD resolution on the TP25 because it's the same computer but better, right? So I don't get it. And this is my comment here. And Louis actually responded to me, and he said, and obviously he's made thousands and thousands of dollars. He wants to say, oh, it's unverified sum of money you pulled out of your ass. Dude, you obviously made thousands and thousands of dollars because you have that many subscribers on YouTube. You have hundreds of thousands of views on your videos. You obviously have ads on those videos. So clearly you're making a lot of money. Like, it's not, I don't care if it's unverified or not. I have a pretty good idea you're making a lot of money from Lenovo by discussing Lenovo, I mean. Um, yeah, they don't offer retro workstations. Like I said, their budget only allowed to make one model. Um, and he does have a point here. He says making this keyboard an option to all models would have been preferable to this one size fits all. I think that would have been good to make it, but they would have to accommodate all these different chassis sizes and stuff. So that's something else to consider as well. Like I said, even the T470P has a different chassis than the T470. So they would have to redesign the keyboard a little bit to fit all these different other computers, right? So it's a little bit more work from Lenovo. I'm sure they can charge at least $100 or $200 for it and make some money. Um, but it's an option for them. And this point I do agree with. They can probably do that and make some money. But right now they just want to test the waters with one model and see how much demand it gets, right? Because this is, like I said, a pet project by David Hill. So they didn't have much funding, they didn't have much money, and this is all they could do, the best they could do, I guess. So, and the 940MX is not a pile of crap. Come on, like if you want to pull out your venerated T61 and you want to say that graphics is better than 940MX, I mean, really? 940MX is only a pile of crap if you want to compare it to the 1050, the MX150, whatever modern GPUs you want to have on gaming computers and other stuff. Okay, the XPS, but that's not a business notebook, right? Like I said, like 14-inch business notebooks with dedicated graphics, very hard to find. You would have to at least go up to the 15-inch or workstation to get dedicated graphics, usually with an NVIDIA Quadro or AMD FirePro. So yeah, that's all I want to discuss here. This is, I think I've already done like a 30-minute rant already about this, but yeah, I wanted to respond to Louis Rossman and a bunch of other people, a lot of other people on the internet who just want to hate the ThinkPad 25. They love to hate on it, and as a ThinkPad 25 owner, I feel it's my job and duty to defend the ThinkPad 25, even though I criticized it as well in my YouTube video. I do think there are some merits in this computer though, and I do like using it a lot, and it's become my daily driver. So I don't think it's a pile of junk. I don't think it's overpriced, and I think it's a pretty good general purpose computer to use. So yeah, that's my defense of the ThinkPad 25, and leave me your comments if you agree or disagree, or you agree or disagree with Louis Rossman. So let me know, and again, thanks for watching this little rant. It's actually a rant about another rant, but yeah. I just want to say I don't have anything personally against Louis Rossman. I am subscribed to his YouTube. I do watch a lot of his videos, and I do agree with a lot of the points he makes in his videos. However, I don't agree with this particular opinion, and he's free to have his opinion, and I'm entitled to mine as well. But I just want to say that nothing personal against him. I do think that he he complains a lot about different things, and he's kind of an asshole sometimes. But that's just how he does his YouTube, and he's entitled to whatever opinion he has. I wish him all the luck in his business here, Repair Group. But yeah, just want to put that out there. Nothing against Louis Rossman, and just wanted to put my opinion out there as well. That's it.